Therapists of Reddit. What was your biggest "I know I'm not supposed to judge you but holy SHT" moment? I was counseling a 13-year-old girl for anxiety and she reported sexual abuse from her stepdad. I called her mom and told her mother I needed to call Child Protective Services. Turns out that CPS was already aware and the abuse was first reported around the patient's age 7. Mom was aware of the abuse and stayed with her husband anyway. It was a complicated situation. And it wasn't. How could she not do more to protect her daughter? Sorry lady. I'm judging. Serious question here. How can CPS know there's beepery like that going on? And refuse to do anything? How is that legal? I wish I could answer that. I don't really know. It's not uncommon. Unfortunately. But I also don't think it is legal. Frankly. The system is just completely flooded and so many cases slip through the cracks. At what point are cracks actually gaping giant black holes? It's heartbreaking. My professor once shared what a patient said that made her quit her job. I didn't rape my daughter. She liked it. The daughter was _6_. She couldn't take it anymore. She worked in a rehabilitation center for people who have been sentenced for serious crimes and were forced to get mental help. Really difficult job and this pushed her over the edge. Time to get off the internet. Once had a patient whose wife shook their baby to death. He wanted help reconnecting with his wife. At the time I was a young father of a newborn myself. And he triggered a lot of fear in me for my own child. A deep loathing of his spouse. And pity the how pathetic kind for the patient. I tried for 3 sessions. Met his spouse and everything before handing the case over to my supervisor who knew about my initial reactions. And tried to help me through it. Unfortunately. It ended up being more about my feelings than his. And I was new to the profession at the time. These things are expected to crop up from time to time. But I was still taken aback by my own reactions. You made the right call. Being taken aback by your own reactions. Deciding to hand off the case. And then I assume working through your reactions in supervision or by yourself sounds like a really valuable learning and growth experience. It is standard practice. Different therapists have different schools of thought on how to deal with it though. I had one who insisted that not being able to put aside your personal feelings and help literally everyone was a weakness. Others, better ones, believe that therapists are human too. And we have to be aware of our own experiences and feelings and give ourselves room to be human. If not, we risk unnecessary trauma and burnout. And then we help no one. I do acute pediatric inpatient behavioral therapy. Has never happened with a child. And never will. Parents on the other hand can be real pieces of speep. And the way they treat/abuse their children, then throw them off on us and scream fix them. I'm a big burly guy and I've cried many nights over this. You're a hero, my man. Big mahalos for all you do. I work at a residential group home. We had a kid who we had admitted about 4 months prior. When in a family session they mentioned they had parasites. I'm like, what? Mom goes, oh yeah, our whole family has them. We don't believe in getting rid of them since they're part of our biological ecosystem, and I'm just spent 3 weeks afterwards convincing this family it was an infectious disease concerns as other residents have fecal eating behaviors and various other unsanitary issues that could cause a unit spread. 3 weeks of education, planning, and worst of all convincing this kid and mother that their IQ wouldn't drop because they had agreed to irradiate the parasites. Lots of CBT work. But Jesus, it took way longer than any of my team expected. I work with kiddos who have experienced some kind of abuse/trauma. 90% of my clients have been sexually abused. I have a lot of holy speak moments, but not from judgment of my clients but from what happened to them. I've had clients whose father made them help him dismember mom's body after dad murdered her in front of them. I've had clients under the age of 8 who have been sex trafficked. I've had clients who have been forced to film torture porn. I have holy speep moments all the time. A woman who deliberately kept getting pregnant because she enjoyed the attention, and then would immediately afterwards dump her kids with the foster system, or in one case a willing relative. She had 6 kids at the time I met her. I was once in my psychiatrist's office bi-monthly. 15 minutes med check. She asked me what was going on as conversation. I told her that in the last 6 weeks, my 3 elders aunt and 2 uncles I was guardian/conservator for had died one right after the other. My wife had a heart attack. My daughter attempted suicide. And my mom broke her hip and had laid on her floor for a week before being found. She drank and ate from the dog's bowls. I got that call within 10 minutes of setting up the last funeral. She stopped the meeting, got on the phone with the therapist in the office next to her, and had her postpone her next meeting to speak with me. I was so beeped up. I had no idea. I think she saved my life. I really hope you're doing better, man. I feel like a lot of the comments saying that they never judge their clients might be working in voluntary services, or they've been very fortunate in their client base. Judgment isn't an inherently bad thing. It's how we know that murdering people is wrong. So when a convicted pedophile client told me, "Nothing gets me going like a pair of little girls' worn panties," you better believe I judged the beep out of him. I continued to work with him, and I treated him with compassion and respect because he's a human being worthy of both. I did my job because I'm a professional. But I can't honestly say that I didn't judge him. I judged that he should never be around children. I judged that he is not yet ready for change. I judged that his access to his own daughter should be closely supervised. That's a lot of judgments. Understanding your own inherent biases and how they influence your work is a very important part of training and practice. I think that people here are sometimes using different definitions of judge. That's all. Edit. I work in linguistics, and so many disagreements are just caused by people with different definitions of a term not noticing that. Yes. I think you're right. There's judge as in use your moral faculties to determine right from wrong. And there's judge as in condemn. I've definitely seen both in this thread. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week she canceled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy. Which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. I'm super extroverted and the struggle in 2020 is real. I just spend a lot of time on Discord chatting to people. Amazingly, I haven't caught COVID. Just out of curiosity, did you attend orgies before COVID? Is extroverted a way of saying you're into orgies? Sextroverted? Verg introverted? Lots of people discussing pedophilia as an example of the toughest stuff to not judge despite our training. I haven't yet treated a pedophile, thankfully. At least not an identified one. I did run a men's anger management group though. And some of those men had done some terrible things to women. Most of them I found ways to like and admire for their positive aspects. But there were 2 guys in that group I just could never find unconditional positive regard for. One guy basically never spoke in group. He would give one-word answers and occasionally just discuss how unfair the system was to him. I worked really hard to open him up and find things to connect over, but he never opened up to me or the group. He left the group after he strangled his girlfriend and went to jail. She survived, thankfully. The other left group early routinely. Showed up late. Participated minimally and similarly never wanted to open up honestly. He left early one group after we had discussed him staying to the end and threatened me when I told him he wasn't going to get credit for attendance, something the court required. Oddly, I eventually moved into the apartment below him completely without knowledge and listened to him scream at his girlfriend and break speep while I called the cops. I judge these men. They're speepty. Maybe they're redeemable. But redemption requires self-exploration and they both refuse to do so. It's worth noting how differently I felt about them than so many others in the group. Men I found ways to help and admire and respect even in spite of their awful behavior in the past. I can relate to this. My ex used to hit me a lot. Usually leaving me with fractured ribs, black eyes, etc. He would hold me on the ground by my hair and kick the speep out of me. If I tried to get away, he would grab me by my legs, pull me back, and I'd get it 100 times worse. When I left him, I didn't contact him for about 3 months. When we finally did talk, he wouldn't even admit what he had done. He wouldn't apologize. Nothing. He would say let's move forward and not look back. I think this type of person is absolutely a lost cause. I joined in a review of a secluded patient and he threw a cup of wee and poo in my face when we opened the door. I tried to be objective about his experience but I just thought, what a cunt. I work in inpatient services so it can be hard to challenge myself at times, individuals with diagnosis of personality disorder, for example, can do things that in isolation make you think they're just being bratty or manipulative. But to think of the experiences that shape them to react like that in a given situation can help to clear my judgment and find compassion. When someone bites me or hits me with one of our fabulously detachable anti-ligature curtain poles, though, hey, that home visit sounds brutal. I used to work in pre-hospital medicine with a population that also that bit, scratched and flung things even when they desperately needed help. Glad to know there's someone compassionate like you on the other end. It's not often I get to talk about my profession, but here goes. I was working at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center and had a client come in who was a self-proclaimed drug lord. As we worked together, he told me about his history. Included in this history was how he got to where he was currently at. During the conversation, this man admitted to selling his sister into sex slavery, forcibly injecting her with several sedatives and narcotics, and having several people teach her a lesson what this meant. He never shared. He told this story with a blank face, smiling only when he recalled the good times, which he referred to as times when he had enough heroin to get through the day. I'm not sure where he is at now, but this man inspired me to work with victims of sex trafficking. Because not only do they deal with the stigma of selling their bodies, they often manage drug addictions. People would honestly be floored if they realized how many people were addicted to chemicals that they were forcibly given. I work with youth and adolescents who have anxiety, trauma, and/or depression. Some of the kids I worked with had some pretty severe attachment issues. Regardless of this, I never thought I'd have to seriously explain. 1. You can't just buy a straitjacket for your kid. 2. Feeding your kid ultra-spicy ramen each night instead of the meal everyone else is eating isn't specifically defined as abuse. But you have to understand the emotional abuse that this causes. 3. Your kid isn't trying to kill you because they stand in your doorway at night crying. That's likely because they're scared of their traumatic nightmares, but feel like you will just yell at them if they wake you up. Edit. Remove the phrase. Edit 2. Thank you all for your questions and support. This case has really helped to shape my approach to therapy. and has highlighted the importance of healthy communication between parents and kids. My number one tip: don't let someone else tell you how you feel/think. If someone says, "You're angry with me," or something to that effect, ask yourself if you really are. If you're not actually angry, then don't spend a second more on it. A lot of kids/family members get hung up on trying to justify their own actions according to someone else's perception. Edit 3. Fix straitjacket spelling. No, it's not a jacket for sexual orientations. I used to have horrible nightmares as a kid and used to just stand in my parents' doorway wanting so damn bad to wake them up and be comforted, but knowing full well my dad would be scarier than any nightmare. It's a tragic thing that I wish more parents understood. Your kid isn't trying to annoy you. They just want comfort. Clinical psychologist working primarily in forensics here. This means my clients are usually involved in legal proceedings: family court, juvenile court, criminal court, etc. My job is usually to evaluate or provide treatment. I'm not there to judge. That's the judge's job. But of course I have my thoughts. I am usually impressed by the justifications people make for speepty behavior. The one that irks me the most is when parents manipulate their child against the other parent. I've had to do therapy for a 5-year-old who said she doesn't want to see a parent because they haven't paid child support. Excuse me? What 5-year-old knows, understand, or needs to be worried about child support? I got my father accusing my mother of turning me and my siblings against him. We were 14-year, 9-year and 7-year at the time, and never acknowledged that he was the one doing all kind of speepty things to us. We had 8 years of pure pain with social assistance. We got peeped by familiar-ass CPS who only thought about the good for the family. I'm kinda sensible to this argument as it has been using against me, my siblings and my mother. Edit. I see that many children are or have been in my situation. Specialists try to mark us with parental alienation syndrome. A really controversial syndrome that isn't really official. But neither was proven wrong at the time. CPS peeped me too as a kid, not wanting to split up the family after me and my sister told them the emotional and mental abuse our father put us through. Peep CPS. Exactly. So many of us have been absolutely peeped in the ass by CPS. I remember my grandma called CPS several times when I lived with my mom and stepdad, but because it was mostly psychological abuse and neglect they didn't give us peep. One day my grandma was just like peep it and picked me up from there, and I haven't gone back since. God bless your grandma. Opposite side. If that's accepted too. I was assigned to see the lead psychologist of the local hospital as I was severely depressed and had become suicidal. She literally rolled her eyes at me, told me to grow up, and said she could be having appointments with people who were actually about to kill themselves. Not me, who was already working with the team. This sent me absolutely spinning. Bottling everything up, thinking I didn't deserve help, and ended up in hospital 2 years later after an attempt. When they looked at my records, the hospital suddenly became very interested in any psychological experts I'd previously spoken to. Informed them of the above incident. They asked if I knew the name and I said I didn't. But they had a strong accent. They immediately looked like they were about to burst out crying. Apologized excessively, then informed me they had been fired a year ago. No idea how many people were affected by that therapist. I'm so sorry you went through this. I was raped and attempted suicide a little over a year ago, and the therapist I went to see was so very similar to the one you saw. It made me spiral. Start drinking to control the intrusive thoughts and pain. And 2 DUIs later I finally realized I'm going to kill myself. Someone else. Both. And just totally mess my life up. So I am looking into outpatient alcohol resources and a new therapist because I know something is wrong. I hope you were able to get the help you need and are feeling better. Edit. I don't know who gave me an award, but it brought me to tears. Thank you. Up. You mentioned you're getting ready to start therapy. I know we're different. But therapy was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. It's good to have a neutral third party weigh in on what troubles you. And remember, you don't have to stay with a therapist if you don't want. Therapy, like any psychological treatment, is often more about trial and error to find what works for the individual than anything. Also, you'll get out of it what you put in. So be upfront, frank and honest with your therapist. That will help them work with you on determining the best therapy course for you. I wish you the best of luck. Just checking in that nobody wrote my story. Yes. I am relieved. When I was underage, I got caught with a drink on Bourbon Street and got a minor in possession. I was telling my therapist about it, and said that the police caught me with a hand grenade in New Orleans. He didn't realize that a hand grenade was a type of drink. And it was funny to watch him try to process that his patient might have just casually told him that he had been caught with a fragmentation grenade. He took a big long pause, and said, "Where did you even find a grenade?" I realized the misunderstanding quickly and corrected him. But for a moment he definitely was thinking, holy speep, how do I deal with this? At last I have a similar story. So this was back when I was in my first year of engineering study and I just thought that the materials paper was the speep. I especially liked the whole steel section. And at the time my depression and general situation wasn't amazing, so it was one of the things sort of keeping me going, ya know? So of course when my therapist asks about my passions and goals, I said, well, I like steel. And she paused and said, okay. What do you like about stealing? This poor woman thought I had pulled out some surprise kleptomania late in the game. Luckily, like a good therapist, she was non-judgmental but still obviously relieved when I corrected her. Steel is flippin' great, buddy. I too am the nerd that likes learning about metallurgy and steel compositions. I was reading a bit about nitrogen steel recently. And that stuff is pretty cool. Edit. Shout out to you/tint_snob for providing the link to a kick-ass website where you can learn this stuff. Tell me more about nitrogen steel. I have a background in physics, so don't hold back on me. Oh God. I don't, so we'll see how well I explain it. People have recently started using nitrogen as an alternative to carbon in steel. It allows for a more oxidation-resistant steel, meaning theoretically less post-heat processing. I believe it also allows for a higher hardness than traditional carbon steels. The problem previously was the volatility of nitrogen not allowing enough saturation. However, adding chromium and pressurizing a nitrogen atmosphere have allowed manufacturers to get up to 3% mass. Unfortunately, the chromium required makes pretty much all high nitrogen steel stainless, which is always more difficult to work with. The reason there was a new article to read was that apparently through particle metallurgy and static pressure, people have made a more simple alloy like you can find in plain carbon steels, which could mean a replacement of carbon in most steel, instead of just high chromium stainless. It probably won't, but it could. And I like that thought.